called social inequality. And to recognize the social inequality, there were 3 different estates.
Okay, so what estates were there?
There were the first, second, and third estates.
So who was the first estate?
In the first estate, we had the clergy of the Roman Catholic Church, and they controlled most of the land estates, and they were exempt from taxation. And the lower part of the clergy, they were more poor and destitute.
Okay, so who's the second estate?
In the second estate, we have the nobility, and they were exempt from taxation as well, and they held a high position in society.
And in the third estate?
In the third estate, we have the lawyers, doctors, bankers, wealthy businessmen, workers, and the peasants. And this class made up 98% of the whole population, so that took up a large majority of it. And they had the heaviest tax burden because the other 2 estates didn't have to.
The political inefficiency was great due to Louis XV and the XVI and how incompetent they were as kings. They were more concerned about the frivolous pleasures at the Palace of Versailles, and they would tax the people, and the money would go to what they wanted to do, and so that they could have more fun, and the central government fell apart, and it was corrupt because of this. One of the key factors that led to the economic irresponsibility in France was the unbalanced tax system. Taxes were mostly paid by the peasants because of the fact that the wealthy refused to pay them. So this moved France dangerously close to bankruptcy. And the rulers of France continued to spend their money on frivolous things when in reality they didn't have the budget to do so. And the wars put them in even more debt. So this put France into a place that they could not get out of.
Man, I had the weirdest dream last night.
What was it about?
Well,
Whoa!
I'm so glad it was just a dream. Or was it?
The outbreak of the revolution began with the calling of the Estates General. King Louis XVI felt like he didn't need to overly tax the people, so he changed the taxes, and the nobles were upset by this because they said that only the Estates General had the ability to change the taxes. So Louis called the people and asked them to make a list of grievances called cahiers and send them with deputies to the Palace of Versailles. After that, the convening of the Estates General began, and that was when the deputies that King Louis told the people to send came to Versailles, and King Louis refused to listen to their complaints. And so after that, the National Assembly formed. The National Assembly was made up of the delegates of the Third Estate, and they created the Tennis Court Oath, which says that the Third Estate members would not disband until a written constitution was established. The storming of the Bastille, which was a royal prison in France, began on July 14, 1789. What happened here was a group of angry mobs, and they were angry for a couple of reasons. They were angry because bread prices were too high and that they felt like King Louis's troops were out to get them. And so they stormed the Bastille, and the next day they murdered the governor of the Bastille and his men. And this all signified the downfall of the old regime.
The first phase of the revolution was the destruction of the old regime. So in this destruction of the old regime, the way this was really accomplished was by the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which happened August 27th of 1789. And really what that did was just, it listed the natural rights, the rights that could not be infringed upon of these French people. So it's just every basic right they had that really could not be taken away. So after that, they issued this paper money called assignats. And why was that created? Well, it was created really to pay back all of these debts of France, and that was really the only reason for creating that, even though it was used a couple years after. Tired of this pesky smallpox? Do you want to be able to wear that favorite dress without your scars showing? Well, introducing the new #1 solution, Pox No Mo.
I wasn't able to wear my cutoffs when I had smallpox.
That's a joke.
Thanks to Pox No Mo, I can wear them without the ladies running away.
Oh my gosh, I love you!
When I had smallpox, my jump shot was whack. But thanks to Pox No Mo, I'm draining everything.
For the small, measly price of $19.95, you can find Pox No Mo from your local Walgreens.
Side effects may include temporary tooth loss, numbing, rashing, temporary loss of brain function, aging, minor bleeding, sleep eating, blue teeth, fatigue, drowsiness, joint pain, and extreme hunger or weight loss.
The second document produced during this destruction of the old regiment was the Civil Constitution of the Clergy. And it was a bill that really had three purposes. So the first purpose was to place the church under the state control, which is basically just religion mandated by the state, which is obviously a huge issue. The second part of this was that the clergy was elected by the people, which was really big because that's voting. That's a right that is just huge. The next was that this group of clergy that was elected by the people, they had to take an oath to the state, and as a result of that, two different groups erupted, and so that would be the non-juring clergy and the juring clergy. So the juring clergy is all the people that took the oath and they were responsible and they did what they were supposed to. And then we had the non-juring clergy, which were really just this group of rebels that just would not take the oath and they really refused to follow the guidelines that they were given. Alright, so now we're at the overthrow of the monarchy. So we have this whole government, and our leader, Louis XVI, is unfortunately accused of treason, and he is beheaded just like everybody else during this time. So right after that, we have this group called the Jacobins. So the Jacobins are just it's just a huge group of people who just want to make all of these radical changes now that Louis XVI is gone. So there are really three ringleaders of this whole thing. It was just the three ringleaders of this group found in Paris, the Jacobins, and they were just all over the place. So we had Jean-Paul Marat, and Jean-Paul Marat was really, he was one of the worst of them. And then after that we had Georges-Jacques Danton, and following him we had Maximilien de Robespierre. And so those were the three guys who were really in charge of the Jacobins, causing riots in the street on really a weekly basis. So that was obviously a huge issue during this whole overthrow of the monarchy.
People grew to distrust Louis XVI and anyone in power. As a result of this, Brunswick de Manifesto became the temporary dictator of France. Under his rule, mobs mercilessly slaughtered nobles and clergy who were in prison. On September 22, 1792, at the National Convention, they decided that Louis XVI would be taken to the guillotine for treason. During the Reign of Terror, the Committee of Public Safety was appointed by the National Convention. It was led by Robespierre. He designed to take over the affairs of the government in war. He enforced harsh punishment on all those who opposed the revolution and executed 20,000 to 40,000 people.
The Directory was a two-chamber that was made up of two different councils. The first council was the Council of the 500. This was the lower house of legislature in France. They proposed a list out of which the Council of Ancients chose 5 different directors. You had to be 21 years old and you had to vote, and 1/3 of the people were replaced every year. The other council in the Directory was the Council of Ancients. This was the upper house of the legislatures. They had 250 members, And they didn't have the power to make laws, but they were allowed to accept or reject the laws that the Council of the 500 made. Danton believed that the threat was over, and he asked Robespierre to stop the Reign of Terror. But when he did, Danton was declared a traitor and was guillotined. And the convention was fearful for their own lives, so they arrested Robespierre and also had him guillotined. The citizen army began when the levée en masse was first initiated. The levée en masse is the policy of military conscription developed after the French Revolution, and this was when people were forced to join the military. And the citizen army also defeated the European Convention.